What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode. If you're new here, my name is Megan Morensky. I am an online fitness coach and soon to be retired personal trainer. I have actually decided very recently to give up my personal trainer job and focus solely on online coaching for multiple reasons. I love the online space. I really do. I see that is the prime mover for growth. And what I mean by that is clients actually learn how to do things themselves. Personal training, although it can be a very rewarding profession, the downside is that clients get too reliant on the trainer. And I very much prefer the coaching side of things, like coaching people and showing them how to do things themselves. A great example of this is last week, or 2 weeks ago, I was actually out for the entire week as I had my 4 wisdom teeth removed. And with that, my in-person clients, majority of them did not train. My online clients, nothing changed for them. It was business as usual. So that is a great example of why the online space is so powerful, and it's perfect for clients and people that actually want to have the lifelong change rather than just having an appointment in their calendar once or twice a week with a trainer. So I've got 2 weeks left of my in-person training, and then it will be full-time online coaching, which is very exciting. So a bit of background there, but I have been out for 2 weeks, so that's why there was no episode last week, so I appreciate everyone's patience with that. But we are back, and I'm excited to talk about this episode. I really am. I had a lot of time this past 2 weeks to really think about what I wanted to talk about these next few weeks and certain topics I wanted to cover, and a lot of it is based off of questions I get asked in the gym, with clients, online, on social media. And a question I get asked a lot is if you can grow muscle while you're in a calorie deficit. And it's a very interesting topic, and done correctly, it can be done very successfully. Obviously, done incorrectly, you can fall flat on your face. So hopefully in this episode, you find this insightful and also maybe applicable. The first point I want to cover is when you're trying to grow muscle in a cut. So actually, before we dive into the first point, those of you that do not know what a cut is when you're in a calorie deficit. Okay, so which when your calories are less than your maintenance. So your maintenance is if you ate at that for the rest of your life, you would just stay the same. You wouldn't build muscle, you wouldn't put on fat, you would just stay the same. It's your body's burning roughly about the same amount that you are consuming. Being in a surplus or a bulk or a mass gaining phase, whatever you want to call it, that's when you're eating above the calories that you're burning. And a cut is the opposite. It's when you're in a calorie deficit. People make the mistake of making their deficit too large, and that's when you risk losing muscle mass. So you want to find that sweet spot of where you're not feeling like you're starving yourself, but you're also losing a certain amount of body fat per week that kind of keeps things ticking forward. So point number 1, and this is where a lot of people can kind of trip up on, is you want to keep your training at a high intensity. Now, for beginners, this means you actually have to get to a point where you are training at high intensity, because it's very easy when you're starting out to just kind of go to the gym. But how productive is your training? Okay, so you want to make sure your intensity is at a certain level where you're actually stimulating muscle growth. Okay, so you want your body to receive a signal from the weight training that is going to stimulate the muscle growth. Okay, and what I mean by this is strength training, this is lifting weights, this is lifting heavy. It's not HIIT training, it's not 10-minute abs, it's not going on the treadmill, it's not going on the elliptical for 30 minutes. It's lifting heavy weights for a certain amount of reps and sets, okay? On a tangent of this, the psychology behind this, and especially if you're someone with a decent amount of knowledge regarding strength training and you know how nutrition works and the calorie deficits and all that, you want to enter your cut with a mindset of you will grow. Okay, so for those of you that are new here, to give you some background, the rest of this year will be spent me being in a mass gaining phase, and then next year, so 2027, I'll be in my first bodybuilding prep. So I'll be in a calorie deficit most of the year. My mindset next year, I'm already kind of practicing it now, is that I will grow muscle that year. even though physiologically the muscle growth will probably be pretty minimal because I'll be in a deficit, in my brain, I'm training it to think I'm going to grow next year. Okay, so you've got to have that mindset of that you will grow. But for beginners, you want to just go in it with focus more on the intensity side. But for people that are a bit more advanced, that know that they're in a deficit and they're probably not going to grow, and even the more advanced you get, the room for muscle growth and muscle growth potential becomes less. You want to go in with the mindset of that you will grow, even though you're probably not going to grow that much. Okay. With regards to your actual training, you want to make sure that you're hitting all body parts. Now, I know this is slightly dependent on the client's goals, and especially if you're an advanced bodybuilder, you may be focusing on certain parts of your body. But even if you're not a bodybuilder, I'm sure you probably have certain areas of your body that you want to focus on. But making sure that you're targeting most areas of your body. I see this a lot with beginners, is they come in or they sign up and they're wanting to focus on their middle section, their core. So all of a sudden they're wanting like 4 core workouts to do in the week. And they get peed off at me when I give them a push-pull leg split. I'm like, well, where's my core workouts? And this is when I have to have a discussion with them that no matter how much you train your core for your nutrition scrap, you're not going to see the 6-pack, which is always received very well. That was sarcasm. But you want to make sure you're hitting all body parts. So if you're doing like a 3-day split, you could do push-pull legs. If you're doing a 6-day split, you could do push-pull legs, push-pull legs. With one rest day, you could do, upper, lower. It depends on your goals. Myself, I'm trying to build up my shoulders, my back, and my glutes. So I kind of rotate between those days right now. I am doing 6 days a week, although these past 2 weeks obviously have not been 6 days a week. But once I'm fully recovered, I've still got a little bit of recovery to do in terms of like my mouth. But once I get fully recovered, I will go back to the 6 days a week. But it's very much easing back into training right now for me. And just because I'm doing 6 days a week does not mean that you should do 6 days a week. So just assess your goals, assess what you're trying to achieve. How much can you actually fit into your schedule? 6 days may not work for you. 4 days may not work for you. Maybe you just start with an upper lower. But wherever you need to start, make sure that you are targeting most body parts. On top of that, to make sure you're making the most out of your time in your workouts, I highly recommend to have compound lifts in there. So that's like your bench press, shoulder press, deadlift, squats, all those things. That's where you're targeting or you're using more muscles. It's not isolation lifts. Like a bicep curl, you're specifically using your biceps. But bench press, you're using your chest. Your triceps are assisting, and so are your delts. Okay, such as your shoulders. Next point is keeping your protein intake high. So I recommend 1 gram per pound of body weight. If you're really serious about your strength training and your goals and possibly competing in bodybuilding, I recommend going even higher, that 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. And this will just maximize your muscle growth. Okay, so protein, we all know this, it's the building blocks of muscle growth, or tissue. But you want to make sure that you are not leaving any gaps in your nutrition when it comes to muscle growth. Okay, you want to maximize the results. So I highly recommend that 1 gram per pound of body weight at absolute minimum, going more towards that 1.2. So for example, 150 pounds, if you weigh 150 pounds, get 150 grams of protein minimum. This will definitely help you with feeling fuller for longer. So the longer you diet, the longer you cut for. Hunger is a factor. Of course, little kind of side tip on here, make sure that you kind of welcome it. Don't try fight it. It's normal that your body's going to be hungry in a deficit, so don't try fight it. But having a high protein intake will help with this. It will help keep you fuller for longer. Choosing lean protein sources is something I do recommend to clients, just because if you're in a deficit, your calories, you're kind of view it like a budget. You don't really want to be wasting a ton of calories on, things like steak that have got more fat in it. So that if you think about maybe like a 6-ounce piece of steak, that's got a decent amount of calories compared to like a 6-ounce chicken breast. Okay, so you're getting the same amount of volume, but for less calories. So I always recommend using lean protein sources, chicken, fish, ground turkey, low-fat ground beef. Vegan options, you can do tofu and tempeh. They're good options. But make sure that they're fitting within your macros. Now, supplements, these are good options too. However, they are not required. I do find it does help, especially when your calories are low, to lean on supplements. That's just from my own experience. But if you've got plenty of calories to spare, supplements aren't really needed. And as long as you are hitting your protein intake, just remember that supplements are supplemental to a diet. So if you're hitting your protein targets and then you don't need supplements. You really don't. Save your money. I always recommend to clients, have a protein shake post-workout, and that'll help get your protein up. And that used to be the anabolic window was a 30-minute window after you worked out. Obviously, research has shown that's not true anymore. As long as you get a sufficient amount of protein, spread across your day, and you're not waiting like 2 or 3 hours post-workout to have your first meal, and like if it's full of carbs and fats and minimal protein, then yes, you're probably missing out on some gains. But rule of thumb, I tell my clients, I like it. It's also kind of like part of like my ritual is I work out and I have a protein shake. Okay, point number 3. And this is something I see that is underrated, underappreciated, and just kind of put into the back of people's minds, regardless if they're training for a bodybuilding show or not. And that's a sleep and recovery. Even if you're not in the gym training right now, maybe you're contemplating on it, but making sure that you're getting enough sleep, enough recovery, regardless of your goals, is so, so key. So I aim for 70 hours of good quality sleep, but that's the very minimum. If you're someone that's really serious about your training, I would recommend getting 9 hours. Even if it's 9 hours in bed, you might not actually be sleeping, but just 9 hours of rest. That extra hour does really help. That's something that I try to do. I try to have 9 hours in bed. Usually I go to bed, blue light blockers are on, and I'm reading my Kindle in bed. And usually that puts me to sleep within a couple of pages. But 7 to 8 hours, absolute minimum. The more serious you are about your training, the deeper you're in a deficit, you will find you will need more. On top of that, if you're struggling to sleep those 7 to 8 hours, which is quite common for a lot of us, and also the deeper you get into a deficit, your sleep can be disrupted. That is a normal response of the deficit. Then I encourage you to utilize your downtime, and that may require you to nap. You can also utilize this by just having, some like getting your body almost like into a meditative state. So I'm not saying you actually have to meditate and hum, but one thing I like to do if I'm really struggling, if I feel tired, I'll just put my AirPods in and listen to white noise, or sometimes I do put a meditation in, and just that 20-30 minutes of just downtime of shutting my eyes, it just makes me feel so much more rejuvenated, and I almost have like a second wind for the day. And especially when I was cutting, I found this helped me a ton. Now that I'm kind of like in the middle of a gaining phase and I'm kind of fully fed, I don't need it as much, but even then on the weekends I do sometimes still utilize this. But just utilize your downtime, and if you end up falling asleep, you fall asleep. If you're finding that you are like almost craving naps all the time, then I would almost dive into other factors that may be affecting your sleep. Things like your pre-bed routine. What's your morning routine like? Are you eating close to bed? If you are, like, what are you eating? Or what does your last meal contain? But post-bed or evening routine is very critical. You're trying to get your body into that state of sleep, of rest. You want your body to produce melatonin. That's why I recently bought some blue light blockers. Have they turned my world upside down? If I'm being honest, no. But I just thought if they give me that extra 1% benefit towards my sleep, then I'll do it. The next thing is also to consider other recovery methods. And specifically, I'm talking about accessory recovery methods. Now, before I dive into these, I want to emphasize that these methods will not undo poor sleep. So if you're sleeping like crap, these methods will not undo that. So first things first, you need to get your foundation rest, which is your sleep. Okay, there's no way to cheat that. Okay, it's just, that is your foundation. These accessory things just almost help with maybe if you're sore or just a little bit tired, or you feel you got a bit of inflammation, then these things can help. So I'm talking about things like a sauna, cold plunge, or a massage. These things can help with the recovery process, tight muscles, inflammation, like I've just said, but by far, your best recovery method is sleep. Get your Zs, okay? Number 4, and this one, I love this one because this is something I tripped up on so much. And I'm kind of realizing this in other areas of my life as well, but time is your friend. For some reason, when clients sign up and they have goals, which I love, it's great that they've got goals and they're coming in, they're highly motivated, but they come in and they're feeling rushed and they want to get the 6-pack in 30 days. Or they've got the beach trip coming up in 2 weeks and they want to lose 20 pounds. And they do that because they've left it so long, and all of a sudden the beach trip's around the corner and they're like, oh my goodness, like I feel like crap, I want to lean down for this. But time is your friend. The longer you have to reach your goals, the better. So in bodybuilding concepts, this is probably one of the best tools ever. If you've got more time, then you have more time to grow and you have more time to prep. If you have a goal of, say, to lose 30 pounds, give yourself time to lose that 30 pounds where you can do it correctly and you can do it sustainably, where once you reach your goal, you're not going to rebound. So what does this look like? Plan out what you want to do and also view your goals as a lifelong change. It's not a phase, okay? If you're getting ready for, maybe you're getting married, you want your results to stick. So if you have goals to hit, you lose 20 pounds before you get married, you don't want to regain all that weight post-marriage. You want to keep it off, okay? So give yourself plenty of time and view your goals as a lifelong change. It's not a phase, okay? There's phases within the route to get there, within the journey to get to your goals, but the phase itself that's not the goal, okay? That's a step, okay? When it comes to nutrition and figuring out how long you need to cut for and where you should start, I always tell people, like, rule of thumb, if you don't know, like, find your maintenance, and if you don't know what that is, you're kind of useless, you don't really know what calories are or macros, and you're kind of like, I don't know where to start, just Google a calorie calculator and click on a couple, and it will ask you for, your age, your weight, your target weight, your activity level, and it will spit out some numbers for you. I would go across a couple of different calorie calculators and then just find the average from that and kind of start from there. That'll give you a starting point, and then assess what's happening to your body. Okay, so weigh yourself first thing in the morning, go to the bathroom, weigh yourself, write down your weights, take your averages, and see what's happening to your body weight, okay? There's so many things that go into having a successful cut or phase, whatever your goals are, that people underestimate. They go straight to, oh, I'm dieting, I need to be deprived, I need to be hungry, and they just cut their calories. But there's an art to it, there's a craft to it, okay? And this is just like the first point, okay? You're always going to be adjusting things, like every week. That's what I always tell clients, like, we look at the weekly averages, we don't look at the day by days, we look at the weekly averages and we adjust from there. But if you're starting out, find your maintenance, get your average from different calorie calculators, and then go from there. When you're trying to find your first deficit, let's say your maintenance is, 3,000 calories, start with a deficit of 500 calories. And that, roughly, you should lose about a pound per week. There's 3,500 calories and 1 pound of fat. So if your maintenance is 3,000 calories and you're in a deficit of 500 calories, then you'll probably lose about a pound per week. But bearing in mind, that will not be your deficit calories for the entire process of this cut. It will not be your deficit calories for the entire phase. As your body's adjusting, your maintenance is adjusting. So if muscle growth is going up, but body fat is going down, your maintenance is actually going to increase. The more muscle mass you have, the higher your resting metabolic rate is, which is great because the more muscle you have, the more you can eat. That's what I tell people. I'm like, you gain muscle, you can eat more. It's one of the driving forces behind what I do, because I love to eat. But you want to assess your average body weight per week and see how these adjustments are happening. Okay, so you're in your deficit of 500 calories, you're losing a pound per week, all of a sudden that's starting to slow down. Then you can start assessing what's happening with your body weight and make adjustments from there. Typically, you want to keep your protein nice and high and adjust from your carbs and your fats. Okay, but remember that fats are essential. So I tend to lean on more the carb side. However, as long as my client is getting enough essential fats, then we can pull from fats too, because there's more calories in fat. So you can pull from either, but just make sure that you are kind of getting a decent amount of fat in your diet, because that is essential. Your body can live without carbs, but it can't live without protein and fats, okay? But yeah, just adjust from there, but making sure your protein's staying nice and high. Okay, last thing, and this is a big one. You might want to write this down. But manage your expectations. And I put this in there because I was thinking back, with multiple cuts that I've done, but the one I've recently just come out of what I learned. And it's the expectations. And I think back to when I did my first ever cut, when I was more kind of new to lifting and new to training and new to the nutrition, is you don't want to go into this expecting results that aren't really attainable, if that makes sense. Now, I'm not putting a downer on your big goals. I love big goals. If you've been around for a while, you know I love that. I believe in the impossible. But if you're new to lifting, expect that this is going to be hard. This is your first time doing it, that you're going to make mistakes. That does not mean that you're doing it necessarily wrong, or you should quit, or you should stop. Just learn from your mistakes. Don't stop. I always tell people that the worst thing you can do is have these goals, try and fail and give up. I'm going to just break it to you. You're going to fail. You've just got to buckle up and get back to it. Okay, so just dust yourself up and get back to it. But especially if you're new to lifting, this will feel very uncomfortable. You will doubt yourself. You will question yourself. You will be like, oh my goodness, I just don't know how to get this much protein in your diet. Stick with it. Lean on your resources. We live in an age where you can Google anything. We now have AI. You can watch videos on pretty much anything on YouTube. So don't give up just because, the hunger is getting too much, or like I don't know how to get protein in my diet, or I just feel tired all the time and I'm sore. Like, that is part of it. There's no big goal, or not even big goal. No goals are achieved by sleeping. You've got to get after it, okay? And a lot of people don't like to hear that, but any change is going to be difficult. So especially if you're new to lifting and nutrition, you don't even know what a macro is, that's okay. I'm going to tell you, the first thing you need to do is just flip and start, okay? But manage your expectations when it comes to building muscle on a cut. Those of you that are new, that are starting with a higher body fat percentage, you have, one, more muscle growth potential. You've also got more body fat to lose. So you're in a prime spot to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. Now, if I have a client who comes in that maybe is more like on that skinny fat sort of range, where their muscle mass is pretty low, but also their fat's pretty low, they have more muscle growth potential, but the body fat probably wouldn't change. They'll just see their muscle mass go up. With that being said, their aesthetics will look like they are just filling out more. It's not necessarily like, they won't get the compliments of like, wow, you look like you've lost so much weight. They'll get the compliments of like, wow, you look like you're getting ripped. Whereas the person that has maybe got a high body fat percentage, low muscle mass, and they're kind of evening out, that's when they'll get the compliments of like, wow, you look like you've lost weight. And they're kind of getting firmer, not kind of like jiggly. I always say if it jiggles, it's fat. The next thing is managing your expectations. That totally relates to your adherence. And this is something I see quite a lot, and it's something I'm very delicate with my clients around, because I don't want to feel like people are getting lectured from me. But your adherence to the program, to the plan, to the diet, to nutrition, to the training, to your sleep habits, that is what drives the results. If you're not adherent to anything, so if you're not doing anything, then there's no reason that you should expect results. That's like saying, I expect this podcast to go on YouTube, but I'm not going to press record. I just expect it to happen. I actually have to do something about it. I have to plan the podcast episode, plan my notes, what I want to say, set up my tripod and press record. Then I have to press stop and I have to edit it and actually post it. So there's action behind all of this. It's not, I really want to post a podcast episode. I could talk about this and then I just sit here and think, why isn't it happening? Okay, so you actually have to adhere to what your coach is saying or what your plan is, regardless if you're working with a coach or not. But adherence is everything. Adherence is action. Without adherence, it's hard for you to expect anything and see results. You won't see results if you're not adherent. last point of this is managing stress. And this is something that I see so much with clients is stress management. And unfortunately, we live in a society that, oh my goodness, like everyone is so stressed. And I've experienced myself. And being stressed is the number one killer of results. This truly will stop you from getting anything. It really will put you in a place of frustration because this is assuming you're adherent, you're working out, you're training hard, you're eating right, but you're stressed out, you're not. Your body will go into like survival mode. This is almost like an insurance policy where your body just holds onto everything. It's so stressed that the last thing it's gonna do is grow muscle. It's gonna focus on your heart beating, your lungs expanding, your digestion, but even that can get messed up with stress. And then it's just gonna work so hard to keep that stress levels or try and manage it and take it down. But it's also in a place of it feels like it's being attacked. When our stress levels are up, like I said, survival mode, it feels like there's a threat. So last thing it's going to do is go, oh, I'm going to go burn some fat and build some muscle. No, it goes into survival mode. That's why stress management is something I work with my clients with, that you have to be able to manage it. And again, it's trial and error. It's a mindset shift, viewing things for what they are, believing that this is temporary. And also when stress does hit, because it's inevitable, how do you cope with that? What do you lean into when your stress levels go up? And I mean like healthy habits, going for a walk, talking to someone, cooking yourself a healthy meal, meditating, praying, whatever works for you. When I say stress management, I'm not meaning, go get a bottle of vodka and go to the field with your mates and down it, or go stock up on your vapes, or whatever your kind of go-to is. It's stress management as in like being still, meditating, breathing. When we're stressed, we stop breathing. So it's healthy ways to cope with your stress that will absolutely help you with managing your expectations of getting your results. Okay. So just to summarize everything I've spoken about, growing muscle whilst losing body fat can be done if the right strategies are in place, and also if you're in if your body is in the right place. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you have to be fit and healthy to be in a place of this. It's actually the opposite. This sounds a bit backwards, but the more like deconditioned you are, the more prime you are to lose body fat and grow muscle at the same time. So if you're new to training, new to nutrition, new to all of this, and you've also got a high body fat percentage, then you are in a perfect spot to lose body fat and gain muscle at the same time, which is pretty cool. But by far, I would say the most important thing is being adherent to the program, being adherent to what your coach is telling you, being adherent to your nutrition and your weight training, accepting that things are going to be difficult, accepting the failures and just learning from them. But above all, having the mindset that you're going to succeed before you even start it's a big mover, and that's an advantage you'll have over everyone else. Not that you're competing with anyone else, unless you're a bodybuilder, but have the mindset that you're going to succeed. Okay, I'm going to wrap up the episode there. I hope you guys enjoyed this. As always, if you are interested in coaching, then there's a link below that you can click on. That'll take you straight to my application form. I am accepting new clients right now, so if you are interested when this video airs, feel free to sign up. You can also reach me on Instagram, link below, ask me questions, and also follow my bodybuilding journey on there. Just to give you a bit of background of where I come from, I was actually a professional golfer before I did this, and now I'm leaning more into the bodybuilding realm, and I'll be competing in 2027. So I post a lot on Instagram, on my journey, on my nutrition, mindset, my faith, everything that I'm doing to find my peak. I've started this company, Summit Coaching, a few years back, and it's all about finding your peak. And what I'm finding is that everyone has a peak to find, and even once you find it, there's always a next one. View your goals like a journey. It's like climbing a mountain. There's going to be hurdles. There's going to be times you don't want to go. There's times you're going to be wanting to rest. You're going to want to stop. You're going to want to turn around and go the other opposite way. But I encourage you to keep pressing on. And if you're interested in how I'm doing that in my own life, then make sure to follow me on Instagram. So thank you for your time. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.